Sam, we need to explain these research groups before we do anything else, really, don't we? Like the ERG, for instance. They would have become pretty familiar to some people over the years, but what exactly are they?
So they're a little curiosity, Kimberley, that nestles in a sort of under-examined part of our political system. And this is where, under a quirk that's grown up over decades, you can have bands, groups of MPs from the same party, all getting together. And what they do is they, as it were, subscribe to a bit of a club. And as you say, there's the European Research Group, that's a sort of club on Brexit. There's a Northern Research Group, which is a club for Tory MPs on levelling up. There's a Socialist Campaign Group, which is a kind of fans of Jeremy Corbyn, really, for members of for the Labour Party. And what they do is that they can divert a little bit of their office allowance, a couple of £1,000 a year, maybe a little bit more of the money that goes to fund their office, to a kind of what's known as a research group, to prepare briefings and basically help them come up with common positions. So, for instance, the European Research Group for many years now has been doing research about how to get the kind of Brexit that would mean the cleanest break with the European Union, and pushing for that meant leaving the single market, leaving the customs union. The Northern Research Group, which began in 2021 under Jake Berry, that has been pushing stuff to do with levelling up and advancing the agenda of some of those northern MPs, those red wall MPs that you saw elected when Boris Johnson won the 2019 general election. But here's the thing, Kimberley. Here's one of the reasons why it's quite interesting, which is what these groups end up doing is they get some public money in order to do research, but the groups more often than not end up kind of fronting squabbles with the leadership, whether it's the ERG that famously kind of was a key part of the defenestration of Theresa May, or the Northern Research Group, which has caused trouble for consecutive prime ministers. And one of the things we've done is produce the first ever leaderboard of the amounts of money that go into these groups in order essentially to support them. And each party has one, but then you've got the Northern Research Group that's in this parliament got £139,000 of public money. The European Research Group that's just got just under 100,000. Socialist Campaign Group 67,000, and a Tory writer centre group called the Common Sense Group, which has got about £6,000 of public money. And it's just a little under scrutinised corner of politics, but nevertheless enormously influential. And I just think quite a lot of people, a lot of listeners, a lot of viewers would be surprised that actually it falls to them, to the taxpayer, to support their work, given kind of what they spend quite a lot of time doing.
And the investigation focuses on the NRG. You mentioned them, the Northern Research Group. So tell us about your investigation and how that plays into it.
So we were looking at all of these groups, but we raised one eyebrow at what was going on in the Northern Research Group. And this all started because we, in the last set of Westminster accounts, discovered that people in the Northern Research Group got donations. They got donations from a northern broadband company, sort of small to mid-sized northern broadband company called IX Wireless. And basically, if you're in the NRG, you sort of got this donation of, a few £1,000s. And if you remember back to January, people who saw Westminster Accounts 1 back then, you'll have seen me trying to find out why this company was giving money. They didn't tell us at the time, so I went and knocked on their door, and it was just an empty office block. It was all flooded. Now, subsequently, IX Wireless engaged with us, and they said that they gave money to members of the Northern Research Group in order to support the Northern agenda, to support the levelling up agenda, and they thought that this was a good way, backing the people in this group was a good way of doing that. But after doing Westminster Accounts 1, I was told by a couple of Tory MPs that they were a bit nervous about joining up the Northern Research Group, because there was this conundrum involving public money, money from, their office allowance, and these donations. And I didn't really understand what they were talking about. So we got some of Sky's data people to look into it. And we discovered what could well be something of a pattern, which is, particularly in 2021 when the NRG was starting up, it looks, or in several cases, it's the case that you have MPs signing up to the Northern Research Group, actively telling the IPSA, the organisation that oversees MPs' allowances and expenses, to authorise payments of £2,500 to the NRG of their kind of public money allowance. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, or in some cases 2 or 3 days later, that MP would get £2,500 as a donation from IX Wireless. And there was just a striking correlation between some of the money that was being authorised to go from, the public purse into the NRG with the kind of amounts that were coming from IX Wireless. And I went and talked to some of the MPs. Some of them said, oh, coincidence, no link at all. But one of them said, look, we knew that if we signed on the dotted line and joined the NRG, then we would get a donation. Now, the question there is does that, would they have signed up to the NRG if they weren't getting a donation? Is it therefore a proper use of public money? All of these questions being raised, but are now going to be looked at by IPSA, that as a result of looking at the data that underpins this investigation, have decided to sort of open what they call a review. It's basically an investigation into what was going on there. Now, we've talked to Jake Berry, the chairman. We've got a little bit of video. Hopefully you'll be able to watch some of that video on this podcast, of Jake Berry absolutely denying that there is any link between the donations and the public money. But as I say, I've talked to, a Tory MPs, a member of the Northern Research Group, who say, well, I knew there was a donation coming. That's why I signed up to it. So now there is an investigation announced today by IPSA who are going to look into this, and we will see what they come up with. But it's interesting, because I think the whole question of public money in this area is, as I say, not one that people have looked at particularly closely before.